the military draft coming back? According to one expert,
is a military draft imminent? I would say no.
We are hours away from President Trump's response to Iran's missile attack on 2 military bases last night.
The question is on many people's minds as tensions between Iran and the United States run high.
We're prepared to attack if we have to.
Debra Wada is a former Assistant Secretary of the Army who now serves on a National Commission on Military and Public Service.
We don't have a draft. We haven't had a draft since the Vietnam War, so since the 70s. So you need to actually have a law passed that would actually start the draft.
She understands why people are so concerned about a possible draft.
I think most Americans that do remember the draft in the 70s and with all the connotations that come with it.
During the Vietnam era, the military draft was a fraught, highly contentious one. Here's how it worked.
December 6th.
They had a lottery system based on year of birth.
They're gonna call my number. I just know they're gonna call my number.
Hey, you were born lucky, remember? Your birthday's gonna be the 365th one called tonight, and you're not gonna get drafted.
And you would then get a number assigned.
December 6th is 010.
And if your birth date was that number that was called up in a lottery, you would then be called to a draft and you'd be sent to a local draft board. And they would then have the decision of whether you were physically and mentally fit and also morally fit to serve.
It wouldn't quite work the same way today.
The requirements actually to be in the military is significantly higher today than it was, I think, during the Vietnam War. The process by which I think it would also depend on sort of what skill set they need, sort of what kind of individual that they are looking for that would be able to serve in the military, because obviously our weapon systems are much more complex.
In the military selective service, Americans from all walks of life will learn to live side by side.
Wada says many people confuse the draft with registering for the selective service.
A lot of people have misinformation, or we conflate both registration and the draft as one. And they are sort of two distinct processes. One is that you are required as an 18 to 25-year-old male to register for a potential draft.
That's selective service.
And the second is more of a sort of once the legislation and law is passed, then the draft process begins.
If you're worried about the draft being reinstated in the U.S., here's what to look for.
First thing that you would see, and that should make people be concerned if there would be a draft, is if Congress actually passed legislation to enable a draft. Pay attention to what's going on, right? If you see dialogue happening about whether there are enough troops that are being sent, right? Because we have a volunteer force where we will see the activation of the services, in particularly the Army, maybe the Marine Corps. You'll see the activation of the reserve components and the National Guard, as we did after 9/11. But if we get to a draft, it is sort of a break glass. We need to, take out that fire extinguisher because we are being overwhelmed. I would like to think if we are actually unable to respond and our country is being attacked, right, by missiles, and if we needed a draft, that people would respond. And that would change the dynamic. But, to say that whether it's going to happen in 5 years or 10 years, I think anybody who makes that prediction is just guessing, and I would hate to guess about what the future holds.
And since a draft would need to be established by an act of Congress, voters and citizens would have a say.
Congress will have to undertake that debate. When they go through a sort of having to pass the legislation to reinstitute the draft, you can write to your member of Congress, you can reach out to your senator, you can make your viewpoints known. And so I don't think that it's going to be a process by which decisions are going to be made and a draft implemented without the American public's input. There is a long process by which a draft would need to be taken in order for it to be established.
This is InsideEdition.com.